We're going to talk about the subject that never gets old. Non-denominational churches. And they're growing. They're growing. We're going to talk about why. 50 years ago, non-denominational churches were a bit of an anomaly. Now, it's one of the largest religious groups in the United States. And we have the data guy, the facts guy, the one and only, Dr. Ryan Burge, to join our show today on his own show, The Burge Report, to talk about exactly what's going on. And what I love about Ryan is people think that they know what he really believes, when in reality, he doesn't really share that. He just shares what the facts are. And I love that about your research, man.
My favorite is people go, I know what you believe. And I'm like, you do? Tell me then. Because I don't even know at this point.
Yeah. Actually, the one thing I do appreciate about Ryan is he is very careful to just like, hey, here's my opinion. Although, he has his opinions, of course. But part of his role in the church world is to just share data and to analyze data in a way that people can understand. He does a good job. You need to go check him out at graphsaboutreligion.com. So a little promo there. He's got a Substack, and it's frankly, and I'm not just blowing smoke here, it is my favorite Substack. It's the only one I pay money for. He's the reason I'm on Substack. Now, I've subscribed to some others, not paying others, but yeah, I am a paying customer, man. So
I appreciate you and 6 other people. 2 of them are my family.
You have way more than that.
I do.
And treat me nicely, or I may unsubscribe. So there you
Please don't. I need everyone. Economy's tough right now. Stay subscribed.
Yeah, it is. Inflation seems to be creeping back up, but that is not the point of today's episode. So we want to thank our sponsor, Upward, before we get too much into the content. They make this happen. So the reason that we are able to provide so much free content is because of our sponsors. And we're very careful with our partnerships that we form here because we want to make sure that what we tell our listeners, we really believe in. And let me tell you, I'm a big believer in all of Upward's programming. They have specifically a new one called Upward Running. It's a great way to connect with your community, great way to get your church out there. Do a 5K. They've got a 5K challenge. You can inspire your congregation to engage with your community in a meaningful running ministry. They've also got an app that they have. Very easy to start, very easy to use. But even if you're like, man, I've never done anything like this. It sounds great. I know the world is interested in running right now. I'd love to connect in this way, but 5K would be really, really cool. I don't know how to do all that stuff. Guess what? Upward, that's what they do. They walk you through it. They show you how to do it. Go to upward.org/runcoach. Talk to one of their running coaches. So upward.org/runcoach. Get started today. Give them a shout out. You can shout out, but then give them a call too. And then don't shout at them on the call. That would be rude. But I don't know if you sign up, they probably won't care. So go to upward.org/runcoach. Okay, Ryan. I find this subject fascinating because we were talking a little bit pre-show. Like I'm Baptist. I'm like, I am what I am. And I'm old school Baptist, in case you're wondering, like 5 distinctives Baptist and Roger Williams Baptist,
My man, Roger Williams.
Leland kind of Baptist, John Leland kind of Baptist. Yeah. So, and that obviously, sometimes we say big tent Baptist, but then that, sometimes I say that and people are like, oh, you're one of those liberals. And I'm like, actually, I'm very, very conservative. But no, I love the Baptist movement. And I'm learning a lot about the Methodist movement too, because the Global Methodist Church is one of our bigger partners. Fascinating stuff there too. So no knock against other denominations. There's some really good groups out there that are doing some amazing things. I think I like the Free Will Baptist group too. Eddie is one of our friends. He's their top person and does a great job with them. So I'm not anti other groups, is what I'm saying. But I am what I am. I believe what I believe, and I'm not ashamed of that. But there is this trend of non-denominational churches. I like to say, Brian, that there's no such thing as a non-denominational church because you're always affiliated with someone. You hide it. You're pretty rare that you're completely independent of everything. And then that's where the independent Baptists say, we've been there all along. We were the first non-denominational church.
The landmarkists are my favorite. Like, no, we're the original church. Everyone else is just a terrible copy of us.
Listen, I have a landmarkist story that I'll just have to put on hold. We'll have to talk about that later.
Please.
Because you are from the area of landmarkism, and I pastored in Murray, Kentucky, which is
correct.
Definitely the epicenter area of the Trail of Blood, as it was called.
Oh yeah.
Again, and if that's your particular belief, hey, no knock against you. Just read a history book, may change your mind. So.
Yeah, the Stone Camel movement was like, I learned a lot in college about the Stone. I was like, what happened? And I have a lot of friends. We had debated about it a lot. And at the end of the day, I said, hey, man, go with God. Love you.
There you go. Yeah, Campbellites, as they were called, and what ended up being the Restoration movement. Yes. Really, some good stuff there too. So I'm a church history nerd. I don't want to nerd out too much on this show because we're talking about a group that really doesn't have much history.
No, that's the problem. There is no, read a history book about non-denominational. It's like 2 pages.
It's not much there.
No.
But this is a very big group. And for those who are in this camp, there are a lot of great churches here too. So they're one of the largest religious groups in the United States today. They've grown rapidly. Ryan, why? How did we get to this point?
Well, let's talk numbers just for a minute. To give you a sense of history on this, there's a great book by Finke and Stark called The Churching of America, 1776, 2005. It's kind of the Bible of religious demography, historically in America. And I looked up, I did
Is
a
it
word.
Finke or Fink?
Finke. It's Roger Finke and Rodney Stark. Rodney Stark just died actually not too long ago, about a year ago.
Did not know that.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Anyway, that book's like the Bible. They did all kinds of data work on this stuff. And I looked up how many times they mentioned non-denominational in there. It's once. So, it just shows you, that wasn't even something they thought about when they wrote that book 15, 20 years ago. It wasn't even, we should have a chapter on no, why would we do that? In 1972, about 3% of all Americans were non-denominational, about 3% of all Protestants, too. So it's rounding error. Almost no Protestants were non-denom. And now almost a third of all Protestants in America are non-denominational, and it's about 15-ish% of America. I mean, 15% of America, by the way, is larger than all the mainline denominations combined. The Catholic Church in America is only about 20%, and the Evangelical Church as a whole is only about 20%. So, you got to really start thinking, man, this is the reason evangelicalism as a whole has not declined in America is because non-denominationals have risen so dramatically. Because as we know, the SBC has gone through a pretty significant free fall in the last 20 years or so, losing about 3 million people.
Did you see the news? It came out at the time of this recording. It came out the day that we're recording this, that NewSpring Church in South Carolina has withdrawn from the Southern Baptist Convention.
Oh, yeah. Did you know that when Elevation left and when Rick Warren's church, what you want to call it, they're not part of the SBC anymore? That was 1% of all the baptisms in the SBC were in those two churches combined. Out of 45,000 churches, 1% of them came from 2 churches, Saddleback and Elevation Church.
So what is often said, and this is not in the bullet points for the show notes, but we'll go down this road because, hey, why not?
Why not?
It is a tribe that I'm technically a part of, although I would say I'm more Baptist than Southern Baptist, if that makes sense to anybody. But I love my tribe. I hope the best of them. You often hear from leaders in the SBC that we are a denomination of small churches, which we are. If that, there is no doubt. The median church size in the United States is 65 people. It's roughly that in the SBC too. But more and more people are going to larger and larger churches. So that's another dynamic here. That trend is ending, as we'll talk about here in just a moment. This idea of massive amounts of waves and waves and waves of transfer growth, that trend is ending. It's beginning to wane. Regardless, my point in all of this is there are a small group of extraordinarily large SBC churches that kind of drive the data. Yes. That's the point that I'm making. And if these churches, which are kind of barely SBC, just kind of officially withdraw, like NewSpring and Saddleback,
yep,
you're going to see some numbers in the SBC drop very precipitously in terms of how they are counted. They're going to move off the SBC ledger and onto the non-denom ledger. They're basically already there in practice, but in terms of how they are counted, they're going to move from one ledger to the other. And so my prediction, Ryan, is in the next 10 years, the trends that you see in the SBC, that downward spiral that has been in place, is only going to increase. Thoughts on that?
So I've actually, a little sneak peek for your listeners. I've got a post. I'm starting to do more work on mega churches. There's a database of mega churches that the Harvard Institute of Religion publishes. And I thought, why have I never done anything with that? Like, I should do more with that. So I downloaded it, started doing some analysis. 1 in 250 Southern Baptist churches are a mega church. 1 in 250, right? So out of 45-ish thousand, it's a handful. But again, like you said, like, 43% of all Southern Baptist churches are 50 people or less on an average Sunday, and 65% are less than 100 on an average Sunday. So if you've got one church with 2,500 people, that might be the size of 50 other Southern Baptist churches. So if one of them leaves, that's not one church leaving, that's 50 churches leaving, 75 churches leaving in that one church. What I think you're going to see is you're going to see fewer churches in America in the future, but they're going to be larger. I think average attendance is actually going to go up not overall, but per church, because these small, it's almost like to use an economic thing, it's like creative destruction, right? Where you kind of have to, like, the weaker players have to go away. And what that's actually going to do is actually going to strengthen the bigger churches, because it's actually economically way more viable to have a huge church than have like 2,000-person churches. Because you can have one full-time janitor, you can have 2 full-time administrators. You can the facilities are easier to take care of. There's just a lot of logistical things that are going to happen. The problem is a lot of these SBC-ish, non-denom churches-ish, the calculus used to be we benefit from being in the SBC, and it was 10 years ago they believed that. And now that calculation is shifting every day, where they just don't see the benefit in being part of the SBC. And actually, it might be a net negative for them. So to me, like Elevation, which is Steve Furtick's church in Charlotte, North Carolina, was really instructive, because when the whole thing with Rick Warren happened, that Elevation had women in leadership at that point. No one talked about this, but if you knew people there, they would tell you this. They left the SBC on a Friday afternoon at 5:00. And they did that for a very specific reason, because that's called take out the trash day in the media world, because all the reporters are gone. They're not going to write a story about this because it's Friday afternoon and they want to go home. And they say, we'll have no further comment about it. And they've never, not one of those people has publicly commented about them leaving the SBC. They did it so quietly. That's what you're going to see a lot more of, because they realize it's just easier for us to walk away, but we don't want to make a big deal of us walking away, but we're going to walk away. And the SBC is going to be hurt by it numerically, and also from cooperative program dollars too. That's a lot of money flowing in. They're not going to have flowing in anymore.
Yeah, in fact, that was NewSpring. That was what they said. I don't want to put words in their mouth. You can go read the statement for yourself. But in essence, it said this is doing more harm than good with us being here. I'm paraphrasing there.
Sure.
I want to clarify something, though. So, one, it may be more economically viable for people to be at larger churches. It may not be more spiritually beneficial, though. So
I will make no claims about that, Sam. That's somebody else's world to go into. Yeah.
No, I hear you. I'll make that claim. Two, I don't think you're going to see like just another mega church boom, though. I think the people that benefit from this are honestly churches like mine. We average 700 on a Sunday. We're a quote unquote larger church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The people that are left at these churches of 40, 50, and 60 that are potentially closing their doors, I hope they don't. I hope they figure out a way to make it work.
Sure.
But if they do, they're not the ones who are likely to go to the mega church. They're probably going to go to a more, what many would say is a mid-sized church, but in reality, it's a very large church. So I do think the beneficiaries of this trend is not the mega church, because the numbers of mega churches is almost half of what they were at their peak in 2012. I think the beneficiaries are those churches of 2, 3, 4, 5, 600. But I could be wrong. We'll see. Time will tell.
I mean, from my church closed, right? We had 10 people at the end. And we have a mega church in town. It has like 1,800 on an average Sunday across multiple services and stuff. And I know for a fact that not a single member of my former church is going to the mega church. They're actually going, of the ones I know, which is like 7 out of 10, I know exactly where they're going. They're going to a church exactly. They're like 200-person churches, 300-person churches, kind of like that middle. They don't want to go small anymore. And I get why I don't want to go to a small church anymore, because I actually had to do everything there, right? Like you had to wear every hat. It's nice to go to a church where you do one thing. You serve on one committee, or you do one activity with the church every week. That's what my people wanted. And that's actually what I wanted too. That's why I went to a church like that, because it's like, if I want to show up and not do anything, I can show up and not do anything. If I want to go to Wednesday night dinner, they've got that option for me. If I want to go to Bible study, they've got nice options for Bible study to do that. So I think that's the key is the death of the 25-person church is not necessarily a win for the mega church. I think the mega church audience is a different audience than small church people are interested in, and they're intentionally not going to the mega church because they like the smaller, not 25 people again, like 200 people or less is more ideal than the 25 person. So I think the thing about mega churches is no one is really honest with themselves about where they're drawing people from. Like I've tried to do a lot of research on this, and I've talked to megachurch pastors. Can I survey your people and ask them, did they go anywhere else before they went to your church? They're very reluctant to do that kind of study because you know what they're very reluctant to find out is they're actually probably poaching a lot more people from other churches than they realize, and they don't want those numbers to be public, which I get because the narrative they want to sell is we're bringing new people into the kingdom, lots of new people. I just don't know if that's empirically the case. Unfortunately, it's mergers and acquisitions, man. It's not adding new people to the market.
Yeah, the number that I've heard, and I don't have any way to back this up because it's all based on case studies, and it's too sporadic to know for sure. But of the case studies that have been done, there's not many. It's around 90% transfer growth in the churches. So most of your large churches, 2,000 and above in attendance, have grown mainly because baby boomers from mainline churches transferred into these larger non-denominational churches. So where did these non-denominational churches come from? Particularly the large ones, where they came from was baby boomers leaving mainline churches. And we're talking 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, right? Yes. So where did all these churches come from? Baby boomers moving into non-denom churches from mainline churches. But what do we know about the baby boomers? Well, they're older now than they were in the 1980s. Mm-hmm. The transfer growth wave is ending. There's not nearly as many people to pull from. The median church size at that time was like 120, 150 people, depending on who's counting and how. So you're down to 50, 60 people now in a church. There's fewer people to pull from. Yep. So the transfer wave has largely ended. The declines have reached such a point in your mainline denominations that like nobody's left to like leave. The people that are there are older. They're not going anywhere. So I do think that non-denominational churches will continue to be popular, but they're going to be popular with immigrants. Ooh. They're going to be popular with Catholics from Central and South America. And this is how your non-denominational churches will grow in the future. And I say that at the same time, I'm not talking about gigantic 10,000 person churches anymore. I'm talking about that church that's kind of like West Bradenton. We're very loosely Baptist. We have Baptist in the name, but in function, we're very loosely tied to anyone. And only 30% of our church has a Baptist background. Only 15% of our church, half of that, has a Southern Baptist background. We've got people coming from all over. And who's coming into my church in terms of like, well, there's lots of people coming in, but it's people from Central and South America who are looking to get out of Catholicism into something that is more generally evangelical. And I think that's part of the reason why non-denom churches, particularly mid-sized non-denominational churches, are growing right now. Any thoughts on that?
I will even go this far as say the immigrants would be very wise to join a church like that, because what it does is it builds a network for them of people they can tap into if they need help. Like they need a veterinarian or they need a dentist, they need an insurance agent, they need a lawyer. And it's like, how do you find someone like that? Well, you know what? If you're a member of a big church, someone who's a lawyer or a plumber, and they're not going to rip you off because you know why? Because you know those people, right? I think we forget the social benefits of religion a lot. And if you're an immigrant, that's actually the biggest problem you have to solve oftentimes is like, how do I just navigate like living in a new country, living in a new state? And I think we've been telling Michael Graham and Jim Davis and I, what's one thing we learned from the Great De-Churching? The one thing is like moving is the reason people stop attending. That's the number one reason, by the way, is people why they just move to a new location. And so, the most important person in the world is the real estate agent. Because if someone's moving, let's say from Illinois to Florida, which happens a lot, by the way, when they get to Florida, the only point of contact they have, many of them, is the real estate agent helped them buy the house. So they're going to talk to that real estate agent like, what church should we join? or what dentist should we use, or what's a good school district, or whatever it is, that person becomes the most important person in their life for the first 6 months, because they're like their connection to the larger community. And if they can hook them up with a church, that church then becomes the connector that gets them from that 6 months to 5 years. So they can really like build relationships, find friends, do everything you want a church to do. So I know we talk about spiritual things a lot, but I just like, I think part of my role as a social scientist is say, hey, sometimes people go to church not because they really feel deeply about Jesus and the Bible. They go because they need help, like in a very tangible way, and it's a way to get help. And we can't discount that. And we shouldn't. By the way, I don't think we should denigrate people for that. And we should go, hey, man, I'm just glad you're here. For whatever reason you're here, I'm just glad you're here. How can we help you? Because guess what? It's Christians' jobs to help people who need help.
Well,
These are people who need help.
I read the Gospels from time to time, and Jesus did not denigrate people coming to him who needed help. So I don't think we should either.
But what you hear is like, we want real Christians here in the pews. You know, like, and to me, that's not how I think. I'm going to write a book, Sam, which is going to get me canceled, called Why You Should Go to Church, Even If You Don't Believe in Any of It. And it's going to make a social argument for the value of religion. And guess what? There are some people in the evangelical space who hate that idea, think it's the worst idea in the world.
I don't. I want cultural Christianity to come back.
But the thing is, like, I want people to solve the I just had a baby problem, and who's going to cook for me? You know, like when my kids were born, we came home, there was a pot of soup on our front step both times. Yeah. Who's going to take you to drive you home from the colonoscopy appointment or the doctor's appointment? In my church, the one that we just closed, there were several people whose basically their second job was to drive other members of the church to doctor's appointments. Like, how do you solve that problem? And I think we're in a lonely society, an atomized society, a disconnected society. And if religion can help, like, and in some ways that's salvific, you know what I mean? Because like, well, why is this person being so nice to me? Like, why are they giving me so many things? It's because they have a deep and abiding faith in Jesus, and maybe I should too. Like, what a crazy idea.
In my church, we would call those gospel opportunities. You serve your neighbor, just meet their needs, do what you need to do in order to be a genuine person with them. And guess what? At some point, you're going to have an opportunity to be able to share your faith with them. So I don't think you're talking about anything that is, detached from what any church should be doing. You're right. There is a segment of people that are they're the gatekeepers, they're the purists, they're the ones that think, church needs to be in a very particular way. But yeah, I am still Baptist at the core, and you know what? Autonomy of local church, man. So you do church the way you want to do church. I'll do church the way I want to do church. I'll protect your religious freedom. You protect mine. We all be all right if that's the case. So
we all be all right.
Yeah. Last thing, and we'll just spend like 1 minute here. Let's talk about institutional trust. There's a decline in institutional trust in the United States in general. Does that have anything to do with the rise in non-denominationalism?
I think to me, like, what are non-denoms? Like, yeah, we like Jesus, but not religion, man. It's a religion, not a relationship. Like, let's like get rid of all the trappings of denominations because those are bad. And non-denoms are like, no, man, we're just fly by night, and we just started in our basement. And here, boom, bang, boom, we got a big church. I think a lot of people, and the data says this, by the way, in the early days of non-denoms, you know what? Non-denominational Protestants were a lot less trusting of religion than Baptists and Methodists were. Now the gap is closed because everyone distrusts religion now pretty much equally, which is like, that's bad. But I think the early sentiment was clearly like, we want to go to a non-denom because it's not religion, and organized religion is bad. And that was like the seed. And by the way, if you look back at like, what Bill Hybels was up to and Rick Warren was up to, they kind of made church for people who don't like church. Like, that was their whole bag. And like, that's why they were successful. And that thread has not gone away. I think they still kind of, they're not so as overt about it now, I think, as they used to be 20 or 30 years ago. But there's definitely a thread of like, no, we do it our own way, man. We don't need structures and institutions on top of us. And I think, by the way, the American public, that's what they want. We are a much more bottom-up culture than we've ever been. We used to be a very top-down culture. Like, think of the denominations that were the largest in America. The Episcopalians, the Catholic Church, United Church of Christ, the Methodist Church. You know what those denominations have in common? Incredibly hierarchical denominations. You didn't pick your own pastor. And look at the kind of religion that's doing well in America now. Baptists and non-denoms, which are very individualized, atomized traditions. Look about politics. Donald Trump was an outsider. That's the reason the guy won. His own party did not want him to win the primary in 2016, but he did. And he used that as almost like a badge of honor. They don't want me here, but I'm here. I think that same thread runs to this non-denominational discourse of like, we don't need your permission. We need God's permission to start a church. And I think that's the American ethos right now. It's a very entrepreneurial, self-starter, individualized understanding of things, which we don't have time to go into, but I think can be good, but also has a dark side to it as well. This is, to me, the rise of non-denoms is not just like, wow, that's a really amazing thing without caveats. There are a lot of caveats with the rise of non-denoms that we've not fully understood or figured out how to mitigate just yet.
Badges? We don't need no stinking badges.
Exactly.
For those of you who know the movie reference. And then for those of you who are from my tribe, no creed, but the Bible. So I just somehow connected everything that Ryan said to the movie Blazing Saddles, to a long-held adage of the people of Baptist background. So that probably made no sense, but maybe you followed my train of thought there.
I did. I'm with you, Sam.
I think, by the way, Blazing Saddles is top 3 greatest movie that has ever been made of all
for
movies.
Our kids. Our kids don't get that stuff. Like, it goes over their heads.
I can't. My kids are too young. I can't let them watch it.
Yeah.
They're not there yet.
But I'm going to show my kids Tommy Boy. They're like 13 and 10 now, so they're kind of getting to the age where it'll hit them in the right way. But I don't know if they'll love it as much as we loved it. But, comedy is very unique to when you were growing up. What you think is funny is what you thought was funny when you were 12. I just don't know how much that changes over time.
In my heart of hearts, I'm still 12 years old, and my wife will tell you exactly that's true. So, but if you want to grow out of your 12-year-old phase, how can you do that? Well, you need to be a part of the Rooted experience. Probably one of the worst segues I've ever done, but I've never been good at them anyway. So, hey, you want a discipleship culture in your church? The Rooted experience can help you do this. This is also a sustainable way to launch groups. We talked about the importance of groups, at least briefly earlier. Ryan gave some good nods there. This is a great way to do this in your church. If you're like, man, we could definitely do better with our groups. Rooted is where you need to go. So go visit experiencerooted.com, /church-answers. And they've got some free resources there. They've got some stuff to explain exactly, what all of this is. It's more than curriculum. It is curriculum, and it's great for your church. But man, this is a sustainable movement of discipleship in your church. And that's what I love about the Rooted experience. So experiencerooted.com /church-answers. Well, we've got more episodes on the way. Ryan will be back soon enough with us for the Burge Report. I always enjoy these episodes, so I hope you do as well. Thank you for listening. Give us a thumbs up on the YouTubers, and if you can rate it and review us in your podcasting app, that would help too. We are now at number 8, Ryan. I don't know if you noticed that, the number 8 leadership podcast in the world. So
what?
Yeah, we're like a couple spots behind Harvard. So
where's Carey Nieuwhof in this? I love that guy.
You know what? Don't mention our competitors.
Carey, love you. You're great. Thank you.
Carey's awesome, but he's ahead of us in that ranking. So I really don't want to promote Carey Nieuwhof.
Hey, we're coming for you, Carey. Don't you worry.
Listen, I've said Carey Nieuwhof enough, and if you can spell it, you can find it. So the craziest last name. But where you need to be is Rainer on Leadership right here. We'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.